The View Hot Topics table had seen its share of heated debates over the years, but nothing in recent memory compared to what unfolded on one unforgettable Thursday morning. The audience expected another celebrity interview filled with light conversation and promotional talking point. NTS. Meghan Markle took her seat looking calm and confident, prepared to discuss her latest projects and charitable initiatives. Across from her sat Sharon Osbourne, appearing to promote her recent Grammy tribute and reflect on the difficult months following the loss of her husband. Known for speaking her mind without hesitation, Sharon had never been someone who accepted polished public relations answers, no matter who delivered them. Whoopi Goldberg opened the discussion with the usual introductions, keeping the atmosphere relaxed. The conversation moved through familiar topics, and for a while everything seemed routine. Then Sharon quietly shifted the direction of the interview with a straightforward question about the real-world impact of Markle. There was no dramatic setup and no personal attack, just a simple request for specifics. Yet the question instantly changed the mood in the studio. Meghan responded with carefully chosen language about long-term goals, meaningful partnerships, and creating lasting change. It sounded polished, but Sharon remained unconvinced. Years spent in the entertainment industry had taught her how to recognize carefully rehearsed talking points, and she wasn't interested in vague explanations. What followed caught everyone by surprise. Sharon challenged the response directly, asking what tangible achievements could actually be linked to the organization. The audience sensed the tension building as Meghan attempted to explain the foundation's broader mission. Sharon, however, continued pressing for concrete examples instead of broad statements. Her perspective carried extra weight. Having spent the previous year coping with profound personal loss, she spoke from a place shaped by real hardship rather than public messaging. To Sharon, difficult experiences had stripped away any patience for carefully crafted language that lacked clear substance. The studio fell noticeably quieter as the exchange intensified. Whoopi attempted to guide the discussion back toward safer territory, but Sharon respectfully insisted on hearing a direct answer. She asked again what specific projects, programs, or measurable accomplishments viewers could point to as evidence of Markle's work. Meghan described efforts involving mental health, gender equality, and community support, emphasizing long-term systemic change. Sharon listened carefully before asking an even more pointed question. Can you name one lasting project? One scholarship, one building, one program people can actually see because of your work? For a brief moment, the table became completely silent. No one rushed to fill the pause. Sharon finally broke the silence herself, observing that meaningful charitable work should be easy to describe with concrete examples. Drawing from decades of fundraising and producing events that created visible opportunities for others, she explained that genuine impact could usually be measured in tangible results rather than carefully chosen phrases. The audience remained completely still as the conversation reached its most uncomfortable point, transforming what had begun as an ordinary promotional interview into one of the most intensely debated daytime television moments in recent memory. Sharon leaned back slightly before steering the conversation in a new direction. Her expression remained calm, but her voice carried the unmistakable confidence of someone who had spent decades asking uncomfortable questions. Let's talk about your business ventures, she said. The streaming deal, the lifestyle brand, the rest of it. There have been plenty of reports suggesting the results haven't matched the expectations. How do you honestly evaluate what's happened? Meghan answered without hesitation. Every business goes through different stages of growth. Success isn't always immediate. Sharon raised an eyebrow. Growth is one way to describe it. Other people might simply call it falling short. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience before disappearing just as quickly. I've had projects collapse in public, Sharon continued. Television shows ended early, business ideas failed, contracts disappeared overnight. When that happened, I admitted it. I never hid behind polished corporate phrases. Why is it so difficult to simply acknowledge when something hasn't gone according to plan? I think you're presenting a very one-sided picture, Meghan replied. Business setbacks happen to everyone. They certainly do, Sharon answered. But there's a difference between explaining a setback and refusing to call it what it is. I've been working in entertainment for over 40 years. I've watched careers rise and fall more times than I can count. Meghan maintained her composure. Our partners received everything we committed to delivering. Meeting the minimum requirements of a contract isn't automatically the same thing as creating something people consider successful, Sharon replied. Those are two completely different conversations. The atmosphere around the table became noticeably heavier. I don't think you're seeing the business environment I'm working in today, Meghan said carefully. Sharon smiled faintly. My dear, I've been navigating this industry since long before streaming platforms changed Hollywood. Public relations language changes every decade, but the strategy behind it rarely does. After a brief pause, Sharon introduced another subject. I've also heard reports that you've sought advice from Kris Jenner. That surprised a lot of people. The audience shifted in anticipation. I respect successful women in business, Meghan answered. There's value in learning from people who've built major brands. I understand learning from successful people, Sharon said. What I don't understand is the contrast. Your public message emphasizes privacy and purpose, while her empire became famous for sharing nearly every aspect of family life. Those philosophies seem difficult to reconcile. I think that's an oversimplification. Maybe, Sharon replied. Or maybe people simply notice contradictions when they see them. Before anyone else could interrupt, Sharon's expression softened. Can I ask you something more personal? Meghan nodded cautiously. Has there been any movement toward repairing things with your father? The smile disappeared from Meghan's face. My relationship with my father is private. Sharon took a slow breath before responding. After losing Ozzy, I've learned that privacy becomes meaningless once someone is gone. If I could have one more conversation with him, I'd give absolutely anything for it. That's why I ask. Our situation is complicated, Meghan answered quietly. I'm sure it is, Sharon replied. Every family carries its own history, but grief has a way of putting those histories into perspective. When the opportunity is gone forever, all that's left is wondering whether things could have been different. I appreciate your point of view, Meghan said. It doesn't change the reality of my circumstances. I'm not trying to tell you what decision to make, Sharon answered gently. I'm only saying that time has a habit of making decisions for us. The conversation paused briefly before Sharon returned to a more public issue. I've also heard concerns about staff turnover at your foundation. Not internet rumors. People inside this business have mentioned it repeatedly. Every organization experiences employees coming and going, Meghan replied. Of course they do, Sharon agreed. I've managed television productions, touring crews, and businesses for years. Normal turnover is expected, but when the same stories keep surfacing from different people who don't know each other, experienced people start paying attention. I don't believe repeating industry gossip makes it accurate. Sharon met her eyes without raising her voice. It isn't the gossip itself that concerns me. It's when the same reputation follows someone into every room. In this business, patterns don't appear overnight, and they rarely appear without a reason. Meghan met Sharon's gaze without flinching. Public reputations aren't always based on reality, she said. Sometimes they're built by repetition rather than truth. Sharon gave a slight nod. That's true, she replied. But when the same concerns surface from people who don't know one another over many years, it stops looking like coincidence. That's what experience teaches you. The audience remained unusually quiet. Sharon continued without raising her voice. Let's move to another subject. There have been repeated stories about trouble in your marriage. They've appeared again and again. What's your response? They're nothing more than rumors, Meghan answered. Speculation comes with being in the public eye. I've been married for over 4 decades, Sharon said. I've lived through addiction, betrayal, and more headlines than I can remember. When things were falling apart, everyone could see it because we never pretended otherwise. She leaned forward slightly. So tell me, are these stories completely false? Or is there more to them than you're willing to admit? My marriage isn't something I need to defend on television. No, Sharon agreed. You don't owe me an explanation. But when the public image and the stories surrounding it point in opposite directions, people naturally ask questions. Meghan remained composed. Every well-known couple faces gossip. They do, Sharon replied. The difference is that I never claimed everything was perfect when it wasn't. People respected honesty far more than perfection. The conversation shifted once again. I'd like to ask about your children, Sharon said carefully. There are awful rumors circulating online. Meghan's expression hardened immediately. Those accusations are disgusting and completely unacceptable. I agree, Sharon answered. No child deserves to become the target of conspiracy theories. She paused before continuing. But I've always believed that openness can sometimes take the oxygen away from false stories. Have you ever wondered whether keeping everything behind closed doors has encouraged even more speculation? I protect my children because they deserve a normal childhood, Meghan replied firmly. And that's completely understandable, Sharon said. Every parent makes those decisions differently. I'm only suggesting that secrecy doesn't always silence rumors. Sometimes it has the opposite effect. Meghan's patience was beginning to wear thin. You've made your own family part of your public career, she responded. That doesn't mean everyone should. Sharon accepted the criticism without hesitation. I shared the messy parts of my life because they were real. The arguments, the mistakes, the heartbreak, it wasn't polished or carefully managed. Sometimes honesty is uncomfortable. She took a slow breath. This past year has changed how I see almost everything. Losing someone you love strips away the need to perform. It teaches you that time, truth, and genuine relationships matter far more than appearances. The room had become almost completely silent. I didn't come here expecting to defend every part of my personal life, Meghan said, pushing her chair back slightly. And I didn't come here expecting every difficult question to be answered with polished language, Sharon replied evenly. That's all I'm saying. Meghan reached for her handbag. I think this conversation is over. That's entirely your decision, Sharon said calmly. But ending the discussion doesn't make the questions disappear. She didn't raise her voice. People will still wonder about your foundation, your business projects, your family relationships, and the public image you've worked so hard to create. Walking away won't erase those conversations. Without another word, Meghan turned and headed toward the studio exit. The audience watched in complete silence as the doors closed behind her. Whoopi finally broke the tension. Well, that was certainly one of the more candid conversations we've had. Sharon exhaled quietly. I've spent the last year saying goodbye to the person I loved most. Experiences like that change your priorities. They leave very little patience for polished answers. When simple honesty would do. Julie looked across the table. That was incredibly heartfelt. Sharon offered a faint smile. I wasn't trying to make a speech, she said. I was simply speaking the way life has taught me to. Sharon rested her hands on the table and spoke with quiet certainty. I wasn't trying to create a headline, she said. I was trying to have an honest conversation. Losing someone you love changes your priorities. After everything I've lived through this past year, honesty is the only thing that feels worth holding onto. Everything else fades into the background. A thoughtful silence settled across the studio. Sarah looked around the table before speaking. I don't think we've ever seen anyone challenge a guest quite like that. Sharon gave a small shrug. Maybe that's part of the problem. Too many people in this business are afraid to ask uncomfortable questions because they're worried about the reaction. Afterward, Whoopi nodded before addressing both the panel and the audience. I think it's important to put this moment into perspective. Sharon asked direct questions, whether people agree with them or not. They were questions shaped by a year of tremendous personal loss and reflection. The answers never really became specific, and that's why this conversation became so intense. She paused for a moment. I've known Sharon for many years. I've watched her face some incredibly difficult chapters of life in full public view. Experiences like that change the way a person sees the world. Sharon quietly added another thought. My goal wasn't to embarrass anyone. I simply wanted one straightforward answer. Grief has a way of stripping away everything that doesn't matter. It teaches you that sincerity is far more valuable than carefully prepared words. She looked down briefly before continuing. I walked away feeling disappointed, not because we disagreed, but because I never felt we reached an honest conversation. Joy nodded slowly. I think everyone here understands what you're saying. I hope so, Sharon replied. I'd never wish the lessons I've learned this year on anyone else. If someone can discover them without experiencing that kind of loss, they're fortunate. Anna joined in. Most guests arrive with carefully planned responses. Everything is controlled. A faint smile crossed Sharon's face. I don't think I have that kind of protection left anymore. Life has a way of removing it. At some point, the truth becomes easier than maintaining appearances. Later that afternoon, the full interview aired without noticeable edits. Within hours, clips from the exchange were circulating across social media. Viewers focused on the moments where Sharon repeatedly asked for concrete examples, challenged broad statements with specific questions, and spoke openly about how grief had changed her perspective. Those excerpts quickly became the center of online debate. Soon afterward, Meghan's representatives released a statement, describing the discussion as overly personal and inappropriate for a daytime television program. Sharon responded through her own social media account with a brief message. "I spoke from my own experience and from the lessons this past year has taught me. I wasn't interested in creating conflict. I simply believe honesty matters more than comfort. If direct questions are interpreted as personal attacks, I can't control that. I stand behind what I said." For many viewers, the exchange became less about celebrity headlines and more about two very different approaches to public life. One side emphasized careful messaging and protecting personal boundaries. The other argued that difficult experiences had made straightforward honesty impossible to ignore. Throughout the conversation, Sharon repeatedly returned to the same idea: actions are easier to understand than carefully crafted language, and genuine conversations require direct answers, even when they're uncomfortable. Whether audiences agreed with her or not, few questioned the conviction behind her words. They came from someone who believed that personal loss had permanently changed the way she measured success, failure, and authenticity. The interview quickly became one of the most talked about television moments of the week, sparking debates about accountability, public image, and the difference between polished messaging and personal candor. If discussions like this interest you, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts below. Do you believe difficult questions deserve direct answers, or are some subjects better left private? Let us know what you think.